Hello and welcome to the Gavel. I am Terry Ikumi. The 2022 appropriation bill was laid before a joint session of both chambers of the National Assembly by President Muhammadu Buhari. The proposed budget size is 16.39 trillion naira, and the budget is tagged Budget of Economic Growth and Sustainability. Let's find out how the budget presentation went in the House of Representatives. President Buhari arrived to the National Assembly a few minutes past noon on Thursday, October 7th, to present the 2022 annual national budget estimates before a joint sitting of the National Assembly.
Party leaders.
He kept his presentation shorter than usual to ensure that the event ends quickly because of the COVID-19 protocols.
To this distinguished joint session,
he presents the 2022 budget at a time of economic challenges, a weakening naira, skyrocketing cost of food items, heightened insecurity, and a nation still contending with the effects of COVID-19, which has greatly impacted on revenue.
Actual revenue were 34% below target as of July 2021, mainly due to the underperformance of oil and gas revenue sources. The federal government's share of oil revenue total 570.23 billion naira as of July 2021, which was 51% below target, while non-oil tax revenues totaled 964.13 billion naira.
Tagged a budget of economic growth and sustainability, the 2022 budget is expected to diversify the economy, reduce poverty, provide investment in critical infrastructure, and strengthen security.
The recent passage of the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 and consequent incorporation of Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation should also result in rationalization of expenditure as well as increased investments and improved output in the oil and gas industry. Distinguished senators and honorable members, you will agree with me that a lot has been accomplished over the last year, but there is still much to be done.
The key assumptions in the 2022 appropriation bill include $57 benchmark price of crude per barrel, 410.15 naira to the US dollar as exchange rate, 13% inflation rate, and 4.2% projected GDP growth rate.
The allocation of MDAs were guided by the strategic objectives of the National Development Plan of 2021 to 2025. Defense and internal security will continue to be our top priority. We remain firmly committed to the security of life, property, and investment nationwide.
The 2022 budget has a deficit of 6.26 trillion naira, which President Buhari says will be financed with new borrowings totaling 5.01 trillion naira. Some finance experts are worried.
Some have expressed concern over our resort to borrowing to finance our fiscal gaps. They are right to be concerned. However, we believe that the debt level of the federal government is still within sustainable limits. Very importantly, we have endeavored to use the loans to finance critical development projects.
Done with his presentation, President Buhari lays the 2022 appropriation bill before federal legislators. The Senate and House of Representatives are expected to devote time from now till the end of the year to working and passing the 2022 budget to sustain the target of the January to December budget cycle for the country. Now that the budget has been laid before the National Assembly, the lawmakers have a little over a month to go through with the defense process with ministries, departments, and agencies, and then pass it before the end of the year. This point was boldly stated by the Senate President and Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Your Excellency, on Thursday,
during the budget presentation, the Senate President Ahmed Lawan expressed desire of the National Assembly to work on the 2022 budget and pass it by the end of the year. He also expressed concern about the revenue shortages in the country.
Mr. President, I commend you for maintaining this trajectory of presenting the annual budget estimates before the joint sitting of the National Assembly in good time to enable the Assembly work on the bill. Mr. President, members of the 9th National Assembly have kept their promise of passing the annual appropriation bill before the end of the year to ensure that the bill is signed into law before the beginning of the new year. Mr. President, the need to enhance revenue generation and collection cannot be overemphasized. The level of budget deficit is high, and both the legislature and the executive should work to reduce this deficit through the availability of more revenues. I must commend the Senate and House Committees on Finance and Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning for working together to improve the level of revenues for this administration. Mr. President, we understand that due to paucity of revenues, the federal government has to resort to borrowing funds from both foreign and domestic sources to provide infrastructure across the country. That is why the National Assembly approved the request for borrowing. The commitment of the federal government in providing infrastructure across the country means that the funds must be raised one way or the other. Notwithstanding, government should explore other sources of funding its projects in order to reduce borrowing. I want to assure you that distinguished senators and honor members of the 9th National Assembly will immediately start work on the 2022 appropriation bill. In doing so, will be guided by a sense of duty, responsibility, equity, fairness, justice, and patriotism.
Of receiving an address,
Speaker of the House of Representatives promised that the lower chamber will demand probity from ministries, departments and agencies on the implementation of the 2021 budget.
let me also use this opportunity to say to the heads of ministries, departments and agencies of the federal government of Nigeria that the determination of the National Assembly to deliver a timely budget will not derogate from our responsibility to ensure exhaustive consideration of the bill. We will demand a thorough accounting for the funds previously appropriated, disbursed, and expended. And we will take steps to hold to account those who fail to provide the records we need to make informed decisions on the appropriation bill. This is the responsibility of the National Assembly, and we will live up to it. Over the past year, the House has passed several important resolutions relating to healthcare access, primary education, rural infrastructure deficits, and national security that require actual funding. Where these restrictions have not been included in the appropriation bill, the House will work with the Senate and the Executive to see that the final version of this appropriation bill includes necessary allocations to implement these resolutions and give full effect to the best wishes of the House.
Now, in reacting to the budget as laid by President Muhammadu Buhari, some lawmakers expressed satisfaction. They applaud the president in the area of gender sensitivity, proposed projects, and the plans to improve revenue generation. Take a listen. Tagged Budget of Economic Growth and Sustainability. The 16.39 trillion naira proposed budget for 2022, as presented by President Muhammadu Buhari, seems to be fine with federal lawmakers. President Buhari had said that the 2022 budget is the first in the country's history where MDAs were clearly advised on gender-responsive budgeting. And for female lawmakers, this is cheering news.
I'm also happy that all MDAs have been directed to have a gender component of the budget of 2022.
The lawmakers also support the president's stance on revenue generation.
In terms of revenue drive, I think I support that position of ensuring that we have increased revenue from our various MDAs, because we have the potentials to grow enough revenue or raise enough revenue to support the funding of the Nigerian budget. But I think we need to adapt all measures that will ensure that Nigeria taps from all the untapped areas and closes all the necessary loopholes that will ensure that the nation's budget is financed first from a downward point to whatever can come from outside.
The budget size is 16.39 trillion naira. That shows that it's a tremendous progress in the economy. And as the president has said, for the first time, the retained revenue of the government is stood at 10.13, and also while the expenditure also stood at more than 16.39 trillion, and it's the right step in the right direction. It's a budget of economic growth and sustainability, and emphasis will be placed on insecurity and education taking the front burner. And that shows in terms of allocation, these two will take a priority in this year's budget, while all other sectors too are not left behind in a way to ensure that at least we have a budget that will take care of the economic and social need of the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Budget reallocation to projects has been a concern for federal lawmakers. The House at some point considered and passed through second reading a bill to ensure that at least 40% of the budget is allocated to capital projects. The proposed capital expenditure of 5.35 trillion naira in the 2022 budget, which is about 31% of the total budget, seems acceptable to federal lawmakers.
The capital aspect of the budget, of course the recurrent aspect of a budget will always be there, because you need money to run the government, you need money to sustain all the programs and policies that are ongoing. But the need for continued infrastructural spending and investment in capital projects is one that we cannot run away from, because this is the way that money can percolate, to different strata. And I believe that it is hopeful that through the capital spending that is being projected in the 2022 budget, we'll be able to further spend our way out of recession.
You can see that the government, from the presidential presentation, that's a budget proposal by Mr. President, they have been able to look at the issue of insecurity in the country, which you are also aware that here in the National Assembly we have been lamenting and calling on the government to focus more on the issue of insecurity, because it has affected virtually everything in this country. But from the budget presentation, the government have listened to our own call, and a lot of emphasis have been now been put on the issue of insecurity. And you can see that a lot of money have been put, because we keep agitating that we need to support our armed forces, our police, our security apparatus generally. And another area which I'm happy about is the level of commitment shown by Mr. President in the proposal on the issue of infrastructural development. A lot of emphasis have been put on the issue of healthcare, issue of education, issue of generally on the issue of human capital development, issue that has to do with social investment support. Because we believe our people are suffering. Our smallholder farmers need to be supported, but the president also emphasized on the issue of agriculture, which for me is very, very critical. So these are the issues for me that are very key, and if we want to improve the level of productivity in our own country, we need to support agriculture, support infrastructure, which are the key issues that I'm really happy about.
Personally, I felt encouraged when he spoke about the measures that government is putting in place to block all loopholes and ensure that we have more revenue coming in from different sources, from the VAT, from the internet sources, and from the activities of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, which is a very major revenue earner for the federal government. The second thing actually is also the commitment to the completion of ongoing projects. I think the rate at which we abandon projects every year is embarrassing. It doesn't really, show a lot of sense in the fiscal management of our economy. So the president has given a commitment that rather than starting a multitude of new projects, there will be a concentration on completion of ongoing ones, and I think that is a very good one.
The sectoral breakdown of the budget is expected to be made available to lawmakers by the Minister of Finance in the coming weeks as they prepare to commence budget defense, intent on passing the budget before the end of the year. The upper chamber, among other things, considered the amendment of the compulsory treatment for gunshot wounds and the Apapa gridlock.
A day before President Buhari presented the 2022 national budget to a joint sitting of the Senate and House of Representatives, both houses passed the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework (MTEF). The Fiscal Responsibility Act requires both houses to pass the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework (MTEF) before the president submits the budget to the National Assembly. In the House of Representatives, federal legislators passed the MTEF, which has been revised to reflect the new fiscal terms in the Petroleum Industry Act 2021, as well as other critical revenue and expenditures in the 2022 budget.
After detailed scrutiny, the committee hereby recommends as follows. 1. That the aggregate expenditure of 16.39 trillion be approved, and that the retained revenue of 10.3 trillion be approved, and that the fiscal deficit, in addition to what we have passed before, is 6354.5 billion, 635.4 billion be approved.
The Senate also passed the MTEF, approving a fiscal deficit of 635.4 billion naira, but lawmakers worry about revenue shortfalls.
We are expecting revenue from sources like a share of oil revenue, which is not very stable as it is. Then I want to talk about that of LLNG. Mr. President, in these chambers, LLNG has been given a tax exempt in building the Bori-Bodo Road. I wonder whether that was taken into consideration when we are giving LLNG 3.3 billion revenue, and which is part of what is making us have an increase in revenue. And of course, Bank of Industry is having 8.3 billion as revenue. I don't know what Bank of Industry revenue was like last financial year.
The upper chamber also passed through second reading a bill to amend the Legal Education Act to increase the number of campuses of the Nigerian Law School to 12 at the minimum. The sponsor of the bill, Senator Smart Adeyemi, spoke to journalists on the importance of the bill.
Now, when you have just 6,500 capacity for admission of students, and every year a minimum of 10,000 students are graduating within and outside the country, and they want a space. Don't forget, from our study, out of these 6,000, every year, about 2,000 students fail the law school. Now, these 2,000 students, a good number of them will want to go back to retake the exams. So if you put the 2,000 that are failing, then it means you have capacity for just about 4,500 out of about 10,000. And these 10,000, they keep on increasing because you have quite a number of universities in Nigeria. Then don't forget too that there's a large army of Nigerian youth who are studying abroad. They want to come home. So in order to ameliorate this problem, to minimize the challenges of people going to law school, we came to the conclusion that there's a need to have 2 law schools in each of the geopolitical zones.
The Senate continued with the process of amending the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act 2017 to expand its scope to include the establishment of a Medical Assistance Emergency Fund. The bill, which passed second reading in the upper chamber, also prescribes sanctions for hospitals and medical centers which refuse to treat victims of gunshot wounds.
The Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act 2017 attempts to enforce treatment of victims of gunshot injury who prior to its enactment were being refused treatment by hospitals as a result of misinterpretation of Section 4 of the Robbery and Firearms Special Provision.
But the Deputy Senate President wants the proposed amendment to include penalties for hospitals who refuse to treat victims of gunshot wounds.
Every hospital, public or private, shall receive for treatment, the legal obligation is already mandatory, it's already created, with or without police clearance, with or without monetary deposit, persons with gunshot wounds, and criminalizes contravention. It does criminalize contravention. What is the punishment? What is the penalty in the event that they contravene this? Is it provided for? Okay. If it's not provided for, when it goes to public hearing, please take that into account.
The upper chamber is also seeking solutions to the protracted gridlock which has persisted on access roads to the Apapa Seaport in Lagos.
The Senate notes with great displeasure the gridlock which has persisted on access roads to Apapa Seaport in Lagos and has for many years been a source of heartache for individuals and businesses plying the route.
After the debate, the Senate recommended the private terminal operators explore water transport as an option in the movement of containers. The upper chamber also asked the federal government to collaborate with the Lagos state government and critical stakeholders to evacuate all petrol tankers, heavy-duty vehicles and tank farms along the Apapa Port Access Road.
Our final report is on plenary in the House of Representatives. The House resolved to investigate contracts awarded by the NNPC to rehabilitate refineries, as well as the violence in Anambra State and more. Take a listen.
During the week, lawmakers in the House of Representatives responded to the violence in Anambra State. The matter was raised by Representative Chris Azugbogu days after he was attacked by gunmen in the state and his driver shot dead. The House wants urgent action taken to curb the spate of killings in the state.
The offices of Department of State Security and that of Federal Safety in Nnewi were also burned down, attacked on Sunday the 3rd of October. People were also killed. The House is concerned that unless urgent and drastic measures are taken to halt the tide and combat those elements terrorizing the state, the events in Anambra State could snowball into a major crisis that could affect the entire Southeast and the nation. The House resolves to urge the National Security Advisor and other security agencies to deploy all necessary machineries to Anambra State.
Following President Muhammadu Buhari's Independence Day address, where he clearly stated that separatists were being funded by a servicing member of the National Assembly, Representative Ben Igbakba wants the president to mention a name.
Mr. Speaker, it will amaze you what I faced in the hands of Ghanaian officials. I got there, they kept me for about 4 hours, that they're trying to confirm something. I stayed at the airport for 4 hours, missed the wedding that I went there for, and at the end of the day, one of them walked up to me and said, "Sir, we are sorry, because there's an announcement in Nigeria that a member of parliament is sponsoring terrorism. We are put on red alert to ensure that no member of parliament from Nigeria come here to hide or to cause trouble."
The minority leader has called for investigation on alleged human rights infringement by the police against protesters who were allegedly arrested on the 1st of October in Abuja.
The House concerned that some of the protesters were arrested by the officers of the Nigerian police force and beaten to stupor while others chased into the bush in violation of Section 34A of the Constitution. The House also worried that 4 of the protesters were arrested and allegedly taken to Galadimawa police station, later moved to FCT Police Command, and today denied access to either their families or their lawyers.
The motion was, however, not supported by the Deputy Speaker.
Each time Nigerian police want to do their job, we have one regulation or the other to cow them down. He's coming from the Southeast, Your Excellency. He knows the effect of what IPOB today are doing. Burning police stations, doing things, killing people innocently. If you carry a placard peacefully, go to the right place, but obstructing people who are out to go and look for their genuine means of livelihood, and you say it is human right. I don't know what that kind of human right is.
The Deputy Speaker and others are saying that, yes, we agree with you, but the question is that, was this actually a peaceful protest?
The matter was put to vote and was defeated.
Those in support, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The nays have it.
The House has mandated its Committee on Nigerian Content to investigate the award of contracts for the refurbishment of refineries in Nigeria by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation.
Concerned that the NNPC allegedly awarded the contract of the refurbishment of Warri and Kaduna refineries to Saipem and Technimot, respectively, without the submission of their local content plan for the contract execution and sustainable maintenance.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the Nigerian Content Development Committee is furious with the NNPC for failing to honor a prior invitation.
If for any reason he could not be here present, he should have at least had the courtesy of himself responding to the communications that was issued by this committee. So we discountenance this, we take it that we have not heard from NNPC, and in our next agenda date, if NNPC does not appear on that date, we will not hesitate than to follow the process of the law.
The 9th House of Representatives has continued to insist on the development of local content as a means of growing the economy.
And that's the Gavel this week. Send feedback to the Gavel at channelstv.com. I am Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.